Hello, and welcome to another edition of Your Therapist Needs Therapy. I'm your host, Jeremy Schumacher, licensed marriage and family therapist. It is the Tuesday after Pride in Milwaukee, and I am exhausted. I don't even like party or anything. I just had a booth at Pride, which was lovely and awesome, and I met a ton of cool people and took hundreds of pictures and made a lot of great connections regarding support for religious trauma survivors. And it was lovely, but it is a long festival for someone who's an introvert. So we are recording a little later in the week than normal. And yeah, it's the kickoff to summer. Every American's favorite topic that they know a ton about and can give you very informed takes on is the FIFA World Cup. America's favorite pastime, soccer. No, the World Cup kicks off this week, and I thought it was a good opportunity for me to dip into one of my areas of specialty that I don't get to talk about very much, which is sports psychology. I know. I talk about religious trauma a lot and neurodivergence a lot, and this is the specialty that maybe gets the least amount of shine. Because I don't do it that much anymore, right? I worked in higher ed for 5 years as a college coach, 3 of those years spent as the director of student athlete mental wellness. So I played college sports. So I've been around high level sports for a long time. And yeah, it's a thing that I have in my background that I just don't talk about very often because sports are kind of gross now. And as an adult who pays attention to things, the escapism that athletics used to provide is less. I've been pretty open with my own disdain for myself for still watching the NFL. But here's the thing. I love sports. I like watching. I like participating. I like learning. I like watching people who are really good at something do the thing that they're really good at, which at a fundamental level is kind of what sports is. I really enjoy taking an object and putting it in a goal for a certain number of points, which is at another simple level what sports is. Disc golf has been a real boon for my mental health this summer after last year pretty much having to take the whole summer off because of a 20-year-old shoulder injury that I finally got fixed. And disc golf is hiking through the woods while throwing frisbees at metal chains. And it's the coolest thing ever and so good for your mental health. And yeah, I mean, sports are awesome. Sports are exciting. The ritual of it, 20,000 people chanting something does a lot for our nervous systems. Yeah, I don't cry very often, but the thing that will make me cry as long as I'm by myself and don't have people around me is watching like sports highlights put to music. I'm a 90s kid. You throw on like old pro wrestling highlights and a Creed song, and I'm an emotional wreck. That's not true. I'm being a little sassy, but no, I mean, I will tear up. And something that I particularly find very moving is fan participation. So 20,000 fans chanting MVP at their favorite player who's in the MVP running. Soccer fans chanting 2-minute songs about the opposing team getting arrested for drinking in public. Disorderly conduct is very funny to me. The fan participation at concerts gives me chills when a singer, not like Jared Leto, who does it every 30 seconds, but like, Blind Guardian's live version of Valhalla is really good. I'm a huge fan of the National. I've seen them like 6-7 times live. When we sing Vanderlyle, Crybaby Geeks, like to end the show, it's just the audience singing like that. That's really powerful, I think. And sports has all that stuff, right? It's got fireworks and light shows. And if you're in Milwaukee, hot dogs and sausages racing each other. This is an important part of the bread and circuses of it all. So sports is this really powerful thing The Olympics are millennia old. People have been finding a way to put one object through another object and score points forever. That sounded worse than I meant it to. The goal, the idea, the point system, the scoring, the competition, it's all something. And as a pastime, it can be really lovely. And in modern global capitalism, it has become something less lovely. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about why FIFA is one of, I would say, the worst offenders of this. And yeah, this isn't going to be a fun episode. The weird thing is, personally, I've watched more sports this year than I have in a long time. For a while, it's pretty much just down to watching the Packers, because I can't quit the Packers as a Wisconsinite. Even though the NFL is just as big of a problem as any of these other organizations I'm going to talk about. And it's yucky. I watched 7 minutes of the NBA Finals last night, which is more basketball than I've watched in ages. And again, the idea that people still watch basketball is very funny to me when, like, Scott Foster is still in the league. Like, obviously it's corrupt. What are we doing? Fans know him as the series extender. He's the fixer. When you have a ref who's obviously in on the take, like, okay, what are we doing? I watched like 2 minutes of Adam Silver, who's just a Gollum-looking guy spewing the most corporate synergy talking points and being out of touch. He's the best example of middle management I've ever seen. The idea that Adam Silver owns the NBA and makes the decisions, as opposed to Adam Silver is very specifically supposed to be a punching bag so that the owners don't take any of the heat that the league deserves, is preposterous. Same with Goodell, same with, I don't know if it's the same with FIFA. See, here's the thing. My opening preamble was about how Americans don't know anything about soccer, and like, that's accurate. And the 3 soccer fans who are American who are going to tune in might be offended about that. But again, compared to internationally, like, yes, we know football and we know baseball, and those are deeply American sports. Basketball too. Sports that we've created are the ones that we like the most. And again, that creation comes with a big asterisk. Obviously, people have been doing sports ball for a long time. The fact that we created a league around it or we formalized it doesn't mean we created it. I hear you. But what's going on with the World Cup? Well, FIFA this year has done some preposterous things beyond just giving Donald Trump a made-up peace prize. FIFA has expanded the fields, the World Cup field, from 32 teams to 48 teams. And rather than having one country host it, they gave it to a continent, North America, which is a mess, right? So we have games in Canada, we have games in the United States, and we have games in Mexico. From a PR perspective, the World Cup taking place across multiple countries is like kind of cool. Putting the world in the World Cup beyond just the teams participating, letting more fans get to see it and participate live is not a bad idea. But the way they've gone about it is about as bad as it could get. And for what is supposed to be a green event, FIFA has spent a lot of PR energy saying they're carbon neutral, or maybe not they're carbon neutral, but they're a green organization and the World Cup is a green event. And like, no, it's not. This is going to be the worst pollution for a World Cup of all time. Because of that expansion of teams from 32 to 48, and because of the way it's set up. So it's not that teams are doing their round in Mexico and staying in Mexico. It's that teams are going to be staying in Mexico, playing in the US, then traveling to, their home base, which might be somewhere else in the US or Mexico, and going back and forth. So there's a ton of travel involved. Again, the carbon footprint is monstrous. And the last World Cup did a really bad job at hitting any of their climate change goals. So their goals were to be, again, carbon neutral and to offset these things. They do, carbon neutral has always sort of been a myth. Major corporations like to say we're going to plant X number of trees, but the offset we know doesn't really work that way. It's like it's not even PR. It is like a legal loophole. It's a legal consideration that isn't based in science. Which again, whenever we sort of get around to like science should make our decisions, that'd be awesome. Because a lot of this stuff is not that complicated. Just put the World Cup in a place. I'm not somebody who's like, the carbon footprint, we shouldn't have this giant world tournament. Like, no, I think it's cool and should exist, and shouldn't exist in a way that is bad for the environment. If we're bringing the world together, then maybe we should say, hey, if you can all get behind your favorite soccer players, perhaps you could also get behind having grass to play on and having water that's drinkable for said players, and not have to fly in grass to a desert that gets to host the World Cup because of corruption, which is what happened in the last World Cup. Literally, the climate-controlled planes had to fly grass for the 2022 World Cup because, again, why not? Why not host a sport that requires natural grass to be played in a desert? Make it make sense. Money is the thing that makes it make sense. And so we sort of have these two ideas of sports washing and greenwashing. Greenwashing is a way that corporations and organizations will say they're carbon neutral, or they are green, or what they are doing is somehow good for the environment, or they're aware of their environmental impacts and they're going to offset it through something like planting trees, which doesn't offset a gigantic carbon not neutral bomb that gets set off from private planes and air travel and all this other stuff. Because again, it's not just the teams traveling, although that is a huge problem. North America does not have functional public transportation. If you're going to watch a game in Atlanta and you're going to watch a game in LA, like, there's no way to get there other than flying. And you could say, Jeremy, you could drive, and I'm sure there is a train route, but like, again, not a functional one. I was reading an article the other day from, I think it was The Guardian, talking about how fans are supposed to navigate the games. And like, I mean, I'm not going to throw shade at people from the UK, but like, their questions were laughably absurd, just not understanding how poorly designed the United States is, how huge the United States is, and how poorly designed it is. Again, if any country needed high-speed rail, it's one our size, because to get from point A to point B, like, Atlanta and LA are forever far away. That's not London and, I don't know, name another UK city. And even like in Qatar, it was like there were multiple stadiums, but they were all connected by public transportation. If you wanted to do this in LA or New York City, you could probably get away with it. Again, New York has at least the subway and public transportation. Not saying people wouldn't take taxis, and not saying there still wouldn't be a huge carbon footprint, but like, it's just it's poorly set up. And we keep seeing this with the Olympics every year too, of needing more and more space and needing to fly in snow and create our own snow because climate change is a problem, even up in the mountains. And again, the idea that like, we know all of this and this is an ongoing problem, and then this year we're going to make it worse than ever, is probably the most American thing I can think of, beyond a made-up participation trophy for the guy who complains about participation trophies. I did watch 7 minutes of the NBA Finals. I mentioned that last night. It was heartwarming to see Trump get booed. And I watch pro wrestling. I've mentioned this, and I try not to talk about it too much because a lot of people don't care. But pro wrestling pipes in audience noise. WWE is notoriously bad at this. Theirs is very unrealistic. So that when you're watching at home, you get a different experience, the experience they want you to have, than if you're watching live in person. So this technology has been around for a long time. AEW does it. I don't think New Japan does it, but AEW does it a lot less than WWE. You can turn up the volume. Again, for major stadiums, they have the crowd noise generally mic'd, and they can either mute that and turn it down, or they can turn it up. And they can do different things. Again, WWE pipes in other audio. So watching the ABC broadcast last night was very funny to hear them immediately turn the booing down and then add in other audio to sort of mute it. If you can go online and see live fan reactions taken on their phones, it's very loud, very expressly booing. But again, like the idea that the propaganda stops because it's sports and sports are somehow pure and clean and like great competition. Like, no, we can't even watch sports for the live audio anymore without that being manipulated. And getting specific talking points and having to listen to Adam Silver glaze Trump for being a Knicks fan. What are we doing? I will be saltier as the World Cup goes on. Again, this is probably the happiest I'll be. I'll love watching the games and hate everything else around it. So again, where was I? Sportswashing, greenwashing. So yeah, we don't have public transportation. We cannot balance out the carbon footprint that's going to be happening here. I can't say specifically what the transportation setup in Mexico looks like or in Canada. But again, like those things aren't linked to the cities here, and the teams aren't staying put. They're having to travel. They're having different places where they can practice. Like the footprint for the teams themselves, it's monstrous. That's usually not great. But again, if it's sports teams traveling from place to place to place, like there's a carbon footprint associated with that. But like that's not something where I'm going to say we shouldn't have that, right? The issue is, especially here in America, now the ticket prices are insane, and you're going to have an insane number of private jets flying in, like you do for the Super Bowl every year. And the carbon footprint for that is also atrocious, right? And this isn't regular folks getting in their cars and driving downtown LA or downtown Atlanta or downtown New York City doesn't really have a downtown. You know what I mean, though. This is, again, a ton of international travel, a ton of people who are spending a lot of money to do this. And the idea that, again, it's just the teams traveling is inaccurate. It's set up to force people to have to travel. I think because FIFA wants to have the perception that it is an equal playing field by people having to travel. But again, like, just don't do that. Right? Like, is we don't have the Olympics set up from Salt Lake or anymore? Like, that's just not usable. What are we doing? What if we didn't do it this way? What if the countries that are set up to host a soccer tournament hosted the soccer tournament because this is a soccer tournament? What if the countries that have big soccer stadiums already available and not that far away hosted? We could do that, right? So yeah, this is gonna be a mess. And that's just the greenwashing, right? The environmental impact of this is going to be atrocious. The worst World Cup for climate pollution ever. Travel, I assume, will be a fiasco. Now we get into the sports washing. Corrupt countries use sports to try and normalize their abhorrent behavior against their own citizens or against citizens from other countries. And again, at this stage, like, that's always been America, right? That's always been America. Full stop. No caveats. And we are now in the corrupt stage of probably the worst corruption of our history, perhaps human history. But like, we're beyond what the Gilded Age we learned about in textbooks in grade school, right? So this is something that gets bought and paid for, and then corporations are also buying and paying for the advertising. And we're going to add water breaks because our players need the breaks because the heat and humidity are so bad because of climate change. Duh. Which turns into 2 minutes and 10 seconds more advertising time, which is, of all the things I have to say about soccer, is not a very exciting sport to watch. One of the good things it had going, 45-minute periods, no breaks. Cool, right? So now we're going to stretch that out for some ads, of course. We're going to say it's about player safety when, we could do a lot of things to not make climate change worse so that the next World Cup doesn't have the same exact problems and likely significantly worse. But we're not going to do that. Why would we? We're going to make more money than ever on this very bad for the environment event. Aramco is one of the biggest sponsors. Aramco is a oil corporation that is single-handedly cited for being responsible for about 4% of pollution all time. Right? I mean, not all time, since like 1965, but since we started tracking stuff like this, like, yeah, they're single-handedly 4 percentage points of climate change. Like, that's terrible that a singular corporation can do that and continue to exist and buy its way onto one of the main sponsors of something like the World Cup. Like the World Cup, again, which celebrates greatness in the form of athletic competition from all around the world. Also, we don't care about the world existing and humanity surviving because we're going to pollute so much. He's crazy. A country such as the United States that is hosting the event, having an ongoing war with one of the countries that is coming to play in the event. It's also a problem. Not a great look that Iran has specifically requested that players not be housed in the United States and instead making their home base Mexico, but they still have to travel to the United States to play some of their games. Again, increasing the carbon footprint for very safe reasons, for very reasonable reasons that, hey, the United States probably not super trustworthy right now, especially with like Trump and Hegseth running things and Tom Homan, who we know is open to bribery, running ICE, and, Greg Bovino traveling to other countries to attend racist rallies where he used to run ICE. Like, yeah, do we think ICE and Border Patrol being involved in the World Cup is a good idea? Nope. We don't. We're already having reports of a FIFA referee being denied entry to the United States because they're from Somalia. Because racism, it's so convoluted to explain this, because Donald Trump got his feelings hurt because Tim Walz is from Minnesota and kept calling him weird, and it highlighted how weird he and JD Vance were. And so Republicans have really been mad about Minnesota, which is one of the better states to live in the country. It's run pretty well, has a budget surplus, has awesome natural resources, tons of lakes. It's just a lovely, lovely little place. It's kind of drab and boring during the winter months, and there aren't any cities other than Minneapolis, Minnesota. I see you, Duluth, but come on. You're a town, not a city. And even like Minneapolis and St. Paul are small. Like, yes, they're the Twin Cities. It's two small cities right next to each other, so it feels bigger than it is. But I'm from Milwaukee, which is not a huge city, and like Minneapolis and St. Paul are small. Anyway, so Trump got mad at Tim Walz for calling him weird, and so Republicans wanted to be mad at Minnesota, but Minnesota's pretty awesome, and there's not a lot to be mad about it. The people are too nice, and we say our A's weird. We, as like somebody who has a Minnesota accent, sometimes sneaks out because I went to University of Minnesota. A little bit of toast, and yeah, so there's not a lot to dislike about Minnesota. And so one of the things that they went after is Minneapolis has a large Somali immigrant population, and like they made a whole thing about that, and then this weird sort of let's say creeper, I think is a legal thing I can say. This creeper went around to Somali daycares and tried to like just get access to them with a camera, which like yeah, they didn't let him in, because why would you let a strange white guy with a camera in to record your children? And this became like this sort of weird Republican only talking point about taking tax money, taking state money to fund childcare that they didn't have children in, because they didn't catch the children on camera because people wouldn't let some weirdo record their kids without consent. Which again, I mean, that is convoluted, but summarizes the Republican Party that don't care about kids' consent pretty aptly. And again, it's just racism, because there was a whole funding scam that had gone on in Minnesota, but it was run by a white lady. Was sort of the brains behind it, and the person who was benefiting from it, and not Somalians at all. So anyway, we have this FIFA referee from Somalia, the country of Somalia, thinking ahead. It's like, the United States is a bit of a nightmare right now. We got to get this guy's paperwork in order. So they did that. And by doing that, it got flagged and they didn't let him into the country. The way that FIFA sort of set it up is he can't just go to Canada or Mexico. Again, I'm not the most up to date on FIFA policy, so that's just what I read, that he can't just get assigned to the other games. Again, to stave off the perception of corruption when, again, you've hosted a ton of events in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, now the United States. You made up a peace prize to give to Donald Trump to pay him off. Again, FIFA is easily provable as one of the most corrupt organizations on the planet, not just sporting organizations. It's just blind corruption. And again, it's sort of set up to have like a fall guy. Again, I don't think that's the only person who's benefiting from the corruption. Infantino, like, sounds like a villain, right? Like, that's a villainous last name. And yeah, it's sports washing. Let's put on this great event. Let's have HD cameras catching the stars and having very fluffy interviews with the athletes. Let's ban people from bringing water so that we can charge $25 for water, and then like, oh, we're gonna back up on that. Again, you have sort of all these smoke screen PR scandals, quote unquote, to ignore the larger scandal of just like outright corruption going on. And because soccer is a scarcity excitement sport, I don't know if that term will catch on. Soccer is super exciting when goals are scored, and goals don't get scored very often, which make it very exciting. And like, again, I'm not taking away from the athletes or the sport itself. They're insanely talented, and what they make look very easy is very hard. Most Americans could not move for 90 minutes straight. Just, throwing that out there. Let alone run at a high pace and control a ball while other people are also trying to control that ball. So again, not taking away from the athletes. I feel hockey is marginally more exciting while also being kind of boring, because it is faster paced, and also there are fights sometimes. It's not a thing soccer's a fan of. Not a big contact sport, soccer. Just like I have criticism of the NBA for flopping and drawing fouls to gain an unfair advantage, soccer also has that. But again, the World Cup is still incredibly exciting. It's sports, and seeing the best of the best across the world compete is exciting in the same way that Olympics are exciting. And a lot of Olympic sports I don't know anything about, and I'll still watch them because it's exciting. And watching somebody who's really good at something do something really interesting is always fun. So again, sports washing keeps working because people are going to tune in and watch sports. We know the NBA is corrupt, and I would say rigged to the point of making more money, if not outright who's going to win the game. It is rigged to extend series and have more money and cash flow flowing in, but not necessarily. I don't think rigged and like this team's going to win the championship this year. And, you know, FIFA at this point isn't sponsored by like sports betting like the NFL and MLB and NBA are. So I guess it's got that going for it. I will tune in and probably see some sports betting ads, though, because they have enough money to run ads during the World Cup. But no, I mean, the World Cup is going to make an insane amount of money. FIFA is going to turn a huge profit. There will be travel disasters and huge headaches because international fans are not prepared for how poorly American cities are set up. And there'll be fluff pieces about how, wow, America's not as bad as I thought. And I didn't run into a single MAGA person because they don't have money to be attending these, except for like the rich billionaire assholes, but they're going to be in private boxes. So, yeah, you'll get the fluff pieces and the feel good stuff. And if you hear from regular people, travel was a nightmare, parking was a nightmare. It was really hard to get in and out of the stadiums because like anybody who's gone to a regular sporting event in America knows that, let alone an international event like this. And people will still watch because it will still be exciting. It will still get tons of clicks, tons of views. The ad money will be more than ever, and FIFA will think it is a great success because they made more money than ever because they are, at the end of the day, a corporation. And corporations will always side with fascism and side with corruption because they feel like it is worth it to run the risk of getting caught for the amount of money that they're going to make. And by and large, it is. I mean, again, the corporations keep polluting because the fines that they have to pay for polluting are less than the cost it would take to not pollute. Again, until we implement some sort of degree of like, hey, science, the consequence needs to be larger than the thing they're getting away with. And I'm not like a fan of punishment, but natural consequences are great, and consequences for corporations that are harming the environment should be massive because that's a consequence everybody's having to deal with, not just the corporation themselves. But yeah, sports washing is going to continue to work to a degree, right? Something like the Olympics can be, the IOC can be corrupt, FIFA can be corrupt, the NBA, NFL, and MLB can all be corrupt because, again, they make enough money where it works. I think Saudi Arabia starting their own golf league shifted the world's perception of Saudi Arabia? No, not really. But again, maybe I just don't pay attention to golf. Maybe it's been super successful. I'm stereotypical American, I suppose, in which sports I follow and which ones I don't. Which is, again, to say I really tuned out from everything except for the NFL for 6-7 years. My oldest kid is 8, and I would say since having kids, I stopped watching a lot of sports because the money is gross, the advertising is gross, the propaganda is gross. You know, I chuckle at all these washing terms. There's sports washing and there's greenwashing. And again, like, because it's all corrupt, it's gross, it's dirty, it needs to be laundered. It needs to be cleaned because it's yucky. And if it isn't cleaned, it's not palatable. And again, watching Adam Silver smile while talking about corruption and nobody asking him about a huge gambling problem that the league is dealing with, like, is wild. The idea that Kawhi's scandal with the Clippers didn't come up is, again, like, sports are propaganda, and they're incredibly they're productive propaganda. It works really well because we like to watch the ball go in the goal for the points and the horn to go off and all the fans cheer. Because we're just primates and we're socially conditioned pretty easily. And yeah, something like the scientific method actually works pretty well to keep from sort of our more simplistic brain patterns taking over. And so when we don't use science, we're way easier to manipulate. And so sports washing will continue. Greenwashing will continue, probably up until the end, you know? until planetary climate crisis becomes so much that it is, again, a dystopian version of this is dystopian. I don't know why I'm talking about like some far off sci-fi future, but yeah, I mean, with the global apocalypse, there'll be somebody playing sports because, of course, because we like to put the ball in the goal because we don't do boredom very well. And then Jeremy segued into a happy ending so that listening to this podcast wasn't such a bummer. Yeah, I don't know. I'll watch, I say all of this and I will tune in, not to every game, and I'm not going to organize my schedule around it, but yeah, I'll watch. I will say my watching of sports is still very predicated on like watching highlights, because I don't want to watch a 3-hour ad fest. I might watch, again, I generally watch the Packers. I'll watch pro wrestling, but that's pretty much the only thing I watch live. And wrestling pay-per-views, you're paying for them, and so you don't get the ads. You just get the good wrestling. So yeah, I'm sort of a space where I don't like to watch the advertisements and get the propaganda of it all. That's why I don't really watch the Super Bowl anymore, because it's just a really long commercial, interrupted by bits of not great football, by and large, the past couple of years. So, now that we're adding commercials to the World Cup, it appeals to me less. So I will be on YouTube, and YouTube will cram commercials into a 10-minute video at a shocking rate. And I will still not buy YouTube Premium because fuck YouTube. Yeah. I'm a millennial, so you can certainly drop in the comments and tell me to use an ad blocker, but I probably won't. I don't want the internet to be a ton of work to use, actually. On a good note, not about FIFA or the World Cup, but I am running a retreat later this summer. August 14th through the 16th. We'll be at the Parlor Hotel in Princeton, Wisconsin. I only have 2 spots left to sign up. So spots have filled quick. It is a small retreat. We're keeping it small on purpose. It is trauma-informed and for survivors of religious trauma. I have a grant, which is awesome, and from the Rights and Religious Foundation, Rights and Religious Freedom Foundation. What is? It's RARF, I should really know. I'm taking their money. But sign up is there. I took donations at Pride and had a couple signups at Pride, and more than a couple. It's pretty much filled. But still going to take donations. It is mostly funded from the grant, but not completely funded from the grant. I would love, love, love to have every single survivor who's attending the retreat be able to come on full scholarship. So if you want to donate to that, we'll have a link in the show notes, but you can also head over to my website, wellnesswithjared.com, for more information about the retreat. You can also donate there. All of that stuff goes directly to survivors. That's not offsetting my podcast or going into my pockets. That's funding survivors directly, which is great and a good cause. So check that stuff out if you are interested. Donate if you are able. Again, even a little bit is helpful at this point. Again, lodging is paid for, and several full scholarships are fully funded, and what might be people having to sort of pay for the meal portion and some of the entertainment portions that are planned. And if we could fund that, that would be really great. So makes it accessible to more people, the more scholarships I have. So you can check that stuff out, again, in the show notes or over at my website, wellnesswithjared.com. Thank you for tuning in. I have like a slate of summer guests lined up and not fully scheduled yet. So we'll see. Maybe it'll be more of me. Maybe it'll be some guests. Maybe we'll hit a good ratio of that. I'll keep saying that until it happens. It'll happen eventually. It's sort of the way my ADHD brain works. All right, y'all, take care. Sail the high seas to avoid supporting corrupt organizations as you see fit. And, find your joy. If your joy is honking on a vuvuzela during the World Cup, you do you. All right, take care of yourself. Take care of somebody else. Peace.